We're one Mississippi where there's a magnolia tree. To Mississippi while a mockingbird sings out on its limb. Oh, and what a sweet soulful hymn. I said 3 Mississippi to this land called home.
Good morning. Welcome again to the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. Steve Azar has lots of fans. Paul Gallo certainly was one of them. You were a guest on Paul Gallo's show long before you became host of In a Mississippi Minute, long before you became Mississippi's music and cultural ambassador. Steve, always good to be with you, my friend.
Hey, Richard, I wish we could be together in different circumstances, but we know that Paul is out of pain, and we know where he is. So
amen to that.
That's the comfort we get. And just hearing his voice, just doing one of those retakes, I used to just crack up in the morning, man. When I'd be on my long drives, Richard, in the morning, heading to where I was going, when I moved back home, I mean, I was if I wasn't up, he woke me up. And that voice had such a presence. You know what I mean? It exploded through the radio. And like great radio men of our time, he was one of them. And his voice felt like he was in the car with you, like literally, and just talking to you only, which was the magic sauce that he had for sure.
I was talking with our colleague Ricky Matthews a couple of days ago, and I think there's a sports comparison there when you talk about the relationship between a radio announcer of your favorite team that's been there a long time, the guy that has the ability to transport you to the stadium or to the arena. And I felt like Paul did that. Obviously not broadcasting a game, but in the way that he connected with people over the course of 3.5 decades on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Morning guys like Paul, first of all, it takes a lot to get there and have the trust of the audience. It's your biggest audience. We all know that. People driving in, they need something in the morning to get their day cranked off. So that position on radio is just extremely important. So it does a lot for people. And I had the greatest respect for morning guys. And when I would go, and it was tough on me trying to break my first hit. You had to be up at 5:30 in the morning and be there at radio at 6 to be with them after you played a show till midnight and drove 2 hours from another town trying to sell what the heck we were selling, our songs and ourselves, and no sleep. And man, I never had a time when I didn't get to appreciate how great they were. And it woke me up, and it made me appreciate it. And all of a sudden, however tired I was, Paul had that magic of making you forget you were tired. And he had that he had great conviction and great beliefs. And I love it because he knew good radio. Richard, good radio separate, they like to cause a little bit of controversy at times. And Paul would speak his mind. And I used to go, man, how does he get away with that? How can he say that? And we were so different in that because
I'm not played this morning where I've thought the exact same thing. Like, I can't believe he said that, and he never even hesitated. It was just what he did.
It's unbelievable. I mean, like if I did that, it'd be over. First of all, I'd lose over half my listening audience. Heck, I may lose them all because I may screw up and not go all the way. So I'm unfortunately politically correct when it comes to. I have my beliefs, and I can keep a lot of them to myself or in closed quarters. Well, common sense makes common sense to me, but I love all people, and I appreciate everybody, especially in our home state. I mean, I've known so many people growing up that influenced me. And Paul and I had these Delta roots together. We have ethnic roots together. Our families came over probably around the same time, late 1800s, and they made home here for all of us, and they gave us Mississippi. It had to be extremely challenging. I think that was something that we shared, a bond as well, is that Lebanese, Italian, Catholics whipping on over here, and I'm sure that was difficult for in the late 1800s to be over here, so and how we were able to make a life for ourselves, and it was beautiful. But he was just so special to me. Really got to know him when I moved back, and he appreciated my songs so much. Like sometimes they used to go, Paul, are you messing with me? You quit messing with me. You that's too much. But I would be driving and he loved my song, The Flatlands. And I have so many great songs playing in arenas in the Flatlands and everywhere, from the Opry and you name it. And Flatlands was sort of devilish, I guess, in a way in country music. It was very, I guess it was rebellious, but it felt like Mississippi to me. And I had to say it and play it like it needed to be played. And Paul just totally got it. And also it was where we grew up. So he really got it, so that visual of the lyric and the song was something I think that really touched him, and he'd express it. So cool.
Well, we, without your permission, but I think you were okay with it, when we read a tribute to Paul on Monday morning after his passing on Sunday afternoon, we decided that it didn't need to be just voice. We needed a music background, and Prelude was the song that we played in the background, and just what an incredible, beautiful song.
Wow. I never knew anybody would find that song. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think Will did some digging and pulled that one out. It was just perfect. Yeah. You've done a million radio interviews. Do you happen to remember the first time you were on the radio with Paul?
Yeah, I do. And so at this point, I'd done so many interviews, and I'd lived so much life, and I'd made so many mistakes at radio probably, and said probably some things, when you're tired in the morning, maybe you shouldn't have said. But at this point, I was really honest with everything. I think Paul appreciated that, but I would never cross him. I wanted him to love me. And trust me, I went in with kid gloves and walking on eggshells all the time. But I'd
Not
already
like
been
Steve
listening
Holland.
to Paul. No, Steve Holland's the total opposite of what I did. So flip that. But you know what, Steve, I love how we became friends, Paul and I, and Steve and Paul became friends. They were able to settle their differences in such a wonderful way. That's Steve, listening to him tell the stories. I know you asked me a question, but I couldn't help but love the fact of why can't we all have those differences and still love each other? I mean, it reminds me of growing up, and we got to get back to there instead of being so divided. And, media is guilty of a lot of that, for dividing us, and it's just what it is. And I love the fact that SuperTalk allows me to be on the radio and have my crazy friends on there all the time, and be a part of the team. So it's just been great. But Paul, Paul used to go my radio. What did he call me? He called me my brother in radio.
Brother in broadcast.
In broadcast, yeah. And I'd go, man. I go, Paul, are you okay? Have you listened to me compared to you? And and he goes, you're doing a great job. And I'd call him for advice. In the beginning, I think he told me once, he told me the same thing Gary Valentine did. He goes, hey, Steve, you sort of really good at this. Paul said it too. He goes, now stop and listen. Listen to your guests. And Richard, I'd been asked questions my whole life, and I didn't know how to listen. So Paul was very instrumental in me taking it right before I want to say something. I take take a breath, Steve. And if it's important, you'll inject it after my guest is through talking, And so I was trying to be funny maybe, or when I didn't need to be, or trying to be this. And I realized, just be honest. And Paul was very, very crucial in my early development of getting to stay on the radio for 8 years now, in my 8th year.
This show today it's interviews the entire time, and it's people that were regular guests with Paul and remembering them. And I'm trying to ask each person that we talked to this morning, when you think about Paul Gallo, and I don't necessarily mean today where we're intentionally remembering him, but if you could look into the future a couple of years and Paul Gallo's name comes up, what's the first thing that you think will come to mind?
Well, for me, it's those drives in the morning, because I would text him and go, I'm listening to you, thank you. And he goes, and he would just be talking and go, Steve Azar. Or he'd play one of my songs into the thing, like, he's looking at his text messages. And then and he'd go a little further. And I go, man, that cracks me up. I love how he just interjects it in the middle of like this important sentence, And but the other thing was, when One Mississippi, when I wrote it as the bicentennial song, he really loved that song. And he said that is the unifying song of Mississippi. He was one of those guys, and as it made its way through the House and Senate and legislature, and it went through what it went through, he knew that I would be dedicated to going to schools. I would be dedicated to making sure that the message was clear. He knew my love for Mississippi, and I think that meant so much to me, and he loved that song. And that will be my greatest memory because I feel like that we didn't screw it up. You know, if we would have dropped the ball or we'd have done that, I think Paul goes, you got something left to do. And I still have something left to do, but I'm not going to stop. But I'm going to tell you, his love of that song and belief in what it could do for everyone in Mississippi, for every child in Mississippi, he was 100% correct. And I love him for it, man. I miss him already, man. I can tell you.
Steve, I appreciate you spending some time with us and sharing some memories this morning. I know Paul thought a ton of you, and evident you did of him as well. Big things coming in 2025 for Steve Azar. We'll talk more about that down the line. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I love you, pal.
Gallo Radio Show, SuperTalk Mississippi.